Behind everything we know about optimizing dairy cow health and performance is a scientist who tirelessly pursued the question, why? And when it comes to the role of amino acids in the dairy cow diet, Dr. Chuck Schwab, Professor Emeritus from New Hampshire State University, was once that young graduate student who started asking why, and he has yet to stop. Join me on the journey today as I sit down with Dr. Schwab at the Adisseo VIP Dairy Seminar on this Up-Level Dairy Podcast. This is the podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm Peggy, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. And this special episode is made possible by our sponsor, Adisseo, a global leader in animal nutrition and premier provider of rumen protected methionine for dairy producers who want to capture the value of components and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Peggy here with Up-Level Dairy, and we're at the Adisseo VIP sales meeting. And I have with me Dr. Chuck Schwab, Professor Emeritus from New Hampshire State University, and really a founding father of amino acids and a lot of the early work in dairy cattle nutrition. So welcome.
Thank you.
And so Dr. Schwab, you had some time yesterday at this meeting to be able to really talk about the history of your work. And it's so much bigger than methionine and your work, direct with Adisseo. It's really an industry impact. So can you just walk us through what are some of the highlights of your career from your graduate student days to where you're at now?
Well, I think my graduate school days were definitely, it was just an experience I would never trade.
Yeah.
I developed an interest in the subject as an undergraduate, and I fully understood why it had not advanced to ruminant nutrition. Understood that. But yet, I thought I saw an opportunity there. Opportunity wouldn't be as huge as in swine and poultry because of the rumen bacteria and protozoa, knowing that they, provided amino acids to the cows. And that we probably weren't going to change amino acid composition of the microflora in the rumen as a result of diet all that much, even though I did think there might be some opportunity there. But, we knew enough about ruminant protein metabolism at the time to know that there were significant amounts of protein from the feedstuffs that we fed that would resist ruminal degradation and be available for digestion and absorption in the lower gut. And so the amino acid composition of them then would have an impact on amino acid composition of the protein, the total protein making it, it's a small intestine. So I really felt there was an opportunity there. I was puzzled as an undergraduate why that hadn't been really pursued. But then once I got into graduate school and I realized all the challenges of trying to understand ruminant protein metabolism and how to measure things and lack of technique, not knowing what techniques to use, what markers to use. So I really got involved in that in terms of my master's work and helping other graduate students and lab technicians. So then I got a great appreciation for the challenges. But it didn't take away my interest in pursuing amino acids, because I just felt we could answer that question, whether or not it was important, and get at it, and then figure out whether or not it was something to pursue thereafter.
And you had to fight a little bit to pursue that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. What was that like?
Well, it was, that was at a time in the mid-70s. The faculty had interest in different things. Amino acids was not one of them. And they didn't know, really how much to invest in that as a department, really even how to pursue it. While I felt I had a plan, it was going to be very expensive. And there really wasn't any companies out there that had protected amino acid products at the time. So they weren't there to help support this type of research. And to this day, and God rest his soul, my advisor, Larry Satter, is now deceased. And, I don't recall ever even asking him, where did you get the money? Where did you get the money for this? I didn't have to get the money for it. But somehow he and the department chair, the dean, whatever, came up with the money for it. But the department chair at the time had a big influence.
Yeah.
A big influence, because he was a great department chair, and he was so supportive of his faculty and staff and students. And his mission in life was to make the dairy science department at University of Wisconsin #1 in the nation.
Mm.
And he pulled out all the stops. He spent a lot of time out of the office, out in the community, out in the state, out in the region, promoting UNH. So he took every opportunity to help promote his faculty and staff. And so to him, this was a new step. And he wanted to make sure UW-Madison was part of that first step.
So he really believed in you and trusted in you, what you were bringing to the table.
Such a fine gentleman.
Yeah. So you just said, Dr. Schwab, that was his mission in life, was to be able to really build out that program and its report and its recognition. What's yours?
My mission in life?
Yeah. What's driven you all these years to do what you've been doing? You've devoted your life to the dairy nutrition space.
Yeah. I think what I got out of the program there was a love for research, but I did not get the experience of teaching. My first opportunity to really work with fellow classmates in research in the research labs, and I never had to teach, but I saw good teachers, excellent teachers in UW-Madison, not only in the Department of Dairy Science, but elsewhere. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. World-renowned professors in biochemistry and nutritional sciences, dairy sciences, doing just a phenomenal job of teaching. And what they were teaching was research results, sharing research results that they were getting in their laboratories. And so I saw that. And so when I graduated from there, I was very interested in taking on a postdoc somewhere where I could get some teaching experience. And I loved it. So anyways, then that made my decision to try and get a job in academia.
Yeah. And so
I would be involved in teaching and research. Yeah.
Teaching and research. And that's been your career. Yeah. And one thing you also had said, Dr. Schwab, was that you said the words a couple of times, you saw opportunity. You saw opportunity to dig into amino acids and what they could do and what needle they could move. What was your bigger vision of the impact that was driving you to pursue that? And not just on a science-based level, but a bigger impact on the dairy industry, where it was at that point and where you thought it could potentially go.
Well, yeah, I mean, just thinking about amino acids, I mean, it was drilled in my head in my biochemistry and nutritional biochemistry courses that amino acids were nutrients. But yet back in the dairy science department, we talked about balancing diets for crude protein and trying to figure out how much supplemental urea to feed by, coming up with ways to figure out how much to feed and when to feed it based on room ammonia levels. But nothing was said about amino acids. And yet I knew how central they were to health and disease and just overall health in people. And so there had to be something there, but the industry was not ready for that at that point. And it took another, 20 years plus before we even had one rumen protected methionine supplement, and that was not commercialized yet. But I followed that work with great interest.
Yeah, you always believed in that.
Always believed in it because we knew the impact. My professors knew the impact of amino acids on even things such as embryo development, way back then in mice or rats or whatever. So Yeah, there had to be something there. So, yeah, someone asked me the other day, I mean, how could you hold your interest for 50 years? Well,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy. Yeah, maybe I could have gotten interested in something else, but it's still not, the acceptance of amino acid balancing the way I think it ought to be. I think there's so much room yet.
Yeah.
There's so much room, and there's a lot of education. And I never become an employee of a company because I didn't want to make sales my motive. I wanted education to be my motive,
So that's always driven you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at some point along the way, you started working with Adisseo.
Yes.
And how did that relationship start? They came to you or you came to them?
That's very interesting. Very interesting. So a couple of decades before Brian Sloan would have joined the company, Jean-Claude Robert was with the company. And I don't even remember the name of the company at that time. It was Rhone Planck or Aventus, or I think there was another name before that. But Jean-Claude Robert was based in Commentry, France. And he heard of my research and came to visit in the late 70s, like 78, 1979, said, Chuck, we're aware of your PhD work. We'd like to fund some research with you. And I didn't have any cows available to me that I could use. So I said, in a couple of years, it should work. And so anyways, we stayed in contact. And so the company then began to develop a research program with me. And we did some work with early weaned calves, looking at sequence of amino acid limitation in those. And then we did some lactation work and got really good results. And a fellow by the name of Dr. Brett, don't remember exactly what his title was, but I remember he invited my wife and I over to France. And he just got so excited over the results, and he saw opportunity within the company to develop a product. And I remember that visit vividly because he put us up overnight in a little castle. Yes, and that was our first experience, in France.
Wow.
And just being able to experience some of that. And we were in France for 3 or 4 days, as I recall. But that's how the relationship started.
Yeah. And so this was the first real commercial interest in a product that could deliver on what you had been pursuing at that point for what, 10, 20 years?
You mean in terms of my interest?
Yeah. At what point did that come up in your path? You'd been pursuing your interest in amino acids. And when that event happened?
Oh, that would have been roughly 10, 12 years after I got my PhD.
Okay. So 10, 12 years. So that's when all of this.
It was in the 80s.
Okay. All of this passion.
About mid-80s.
And interest that you had. Now somebody noticed it and said, let's create a product. What was that? What was that moment like for you?
Well, that was pretty exciting because there was nobody else in the United States really doing anything yet but Dr. Henri Rilken with INRA in France. Shortly after I got my PhD and everything, I learned of him. So yeah, in the 80s, I was very aware of his work. My postdoc from 74 to 75 was at the University of Kentucky. And the 3 professors I worked with down there, that's really where I got my teaching experience and really why I went there. But they were doing amino acid work with sheep, and they had interest in beef cattle. They were getting really good results with methionine in lambs. And I had the joy, really, of working with a postdoc down there who was very adventuresome. And both he and I got the idea that we really needed to develop some cannulas, some reentrant cannulas, so we could measure flow of nutrients to the duodenum and then return the digester back into the duodenum. And so we could get really good samples. And so we developed some prototypes in that, and we were doing it with sheep and getting really nice responses with methionine. And then there was some beef cattle work going on down there too. So that really was helpful to me because it reinforced my thinking where the opportunities might be in dairy cattle. And then I learned of Dr. Rulkin in France, and he was doing work with dairy cows. And so that was good.
So the path lined up,
Mm-hmm.
and then a product came to market.
Yeah, the product came to market.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah. So I've been affiliated then with the company ever since then, as they've gone through their evolution. And it's been very exciting because they've always been there to support whatever research I wanted to do.
Mm.
And there was never a need for me to, and I was sort of criticized by some colleagues at other universities, for example, well, why aren't you part of our team? Because we have a team here. We got faculty from this campus, this campus, this campus. And it's all being sponsored by another company. So why aren't you part of our team? And I said, well, I was never approached to be part of your team. So that's the easy answer. So I never made a decision not to join because I just really was never asked to join. And I said, number two, I've always had the support that I needed at the University of New Hampshire to pursue what, time I had to pursue research. Yeah. So it's been a long time.
It's been,
that's all I can say.
Yeah, a long time, a great impact. And one thing that you mentioned yesterday was you talked about, there's something you said where you said it's not just about inclusion of amino acids like lysine and methionine, it's about optimization. And so from where we sit today in the research and the availability of products in the marketplace, what's next?
I think what's next? Well, I think we have to continue educating producers. And I think, as was just mentioned before this interview here in the lecture hall there, that dairy producers aren't real quick to jump onto something unless they can see an immediate benefit. And the biggest benefit to amino acid balancing are the long-term effects on health and repro. And when you have healthier cows, you're going to have better production. It just goes without saying. And for someone like myself who was trained in nutritional sciences, I had a joint PhD in dairy science and nutritional sciences. So I got a lot of nutritional biochemistry in that. And so, I remember professors getting so excited about the impact of adequate amino acids versus inadequate on enzyme turnover and all things like that are going to affect the biology of the animal. That was back in late 60s, early 70s. So we had that understanding. So what's next? It's moving beyond this. And as Dr. Dan Lucchini, suggested to the Adisseo folks and myself years ago now, methionine is more than just milk. Daniel, you're exactly right. You are exactly right. That is the right message. Yet we keep coming back, to the impact on production. And as one of the gentlemen said here this morning, a lot of our producers don't have patience. They want to see the economic benefit right away. But what I can tell you, and there's a few people in that room there that believed in the story, believed in the science, became very aggressive with amino acid balancing, and have never looked back. They have no herds that are not doing it. And those herds will never stop. There was a few years ago when milk prices were in the tank, really bad. And nutritionists were sitting down with their producers one-on-one, saying, here are all the things we're adding to your diet as a nutrition company, and we got to take some things out. Okay, we got to take some things out. And you help us. We want you to be part of the decision. What do we take out? And they didn't have a single producer that said stop amino acid balancing. even though milk prices were in the tank. But what they saw were not things necessarily the nutritionists were seeing. They were seeing the impact on health. They were seeing the effect on calf performance. They didn't know why all this stuff was happening, but they saw the impact that after the nutritionists started amino acid balancing, they started seeing things. But it was the nutritionists that were focusing on milk components, milk protein yield, and trying to justify in their own mind, do we continue or not? That's not what the producers saw.
No, because the producers could see cows
Yep.
and calves for
Yep.
what they were.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if only that story could be shared with the degree of confidence that those producers had to those that are still on the fence. But yeah, it's just the way it is. But I think we definitely got to move beyond methionine and lysine. I mean, histidine is definitely part of the story. We've known that for probably 20 years. That's one reason that blood meal has had such a positive impact on production, and because it carries 2-3 times more histidine than any other protein supplement. Mm-hmm. So not only is it really good in lysine if it's a high quality blood product, but it's very high in histidine. And so that really opens the window. There's just more opportunity there now for methionine to work, because you covered your bases on lysine, you covered your bases on histidine up to a point, of course. And so there's greater opportunity for our good methionine product to really show benefit. Mm-hmm. But now we know we got to move beyond those. But yet, we still have a lot of people that haven't joined the crowd, right, on the importance of lysine and methionine. But yeah, so there's some other amino acids to take a serious look at. And what's holding us up really are having a company like Adisseo or somebody come out with good, viable, rumen-protected forms of something like leucine or isoleucine that we as researchers and nutritionists out in the field can use these products, pull them in and out, and see, can we see a bump in milk yield in addition to the nice increases we see in components, like lysine and methionine. So these other amino acids, I don't think going to have much of an effect on milk component concentrations. It's going to be on the milk yield side. And we'll get there real quick if we have a rumen-protected leucine, isoleucine, maybe valine, maybe a tryptophan. Tryptophan is still one that is hanging out there that we just don't know. Mm-hmm. There's amino acid analysis data that would suggest tryptophan is one that could be holding us back, but there's been a problem with the analysis of tryptophan over the years. So until we can sort of get rid of the literature that's out there with maybe really not the best tryptophan analysis, then we maybe can better zero in on that or show the importance of it. But again, if all of these amino acids were available, not all of them, but the ones that we would pick out is like, what's next? If they were available with good bioavailability values, like smart amino, for example, we would answer that question probably in a year.
Wow.
Because there's fewer and fewer dairy herds, bigger dairy herds. The nutritionists out there are doing a lot of research on their own, trying this supplement, trying this additive, whatever. And they might be doing it on 10 herds or 20 herds, on, off, that sort of thing. And so the models just keep on getting better. So we've got tools there where we can now challenge those models, right? I mean, we got the models.
Yeah.
Say, okay, well, we're going to increase leucine here, or isoleucine. We're going to try that on 10 herds, and so we're going to raise it from this level to this level based on the model, right? And see what happens. And I think we get the answer pretty darn quick.
Yeah.
But if we don't have those products, then you're going to have to rely on researchers and do IV infusions or intestinal infusions. These are expensive studies, $100,000 to $100,000 at a pump, which is a limited number of cows. we can get answers really quick now, unlike years ago when you're just dealing with small herds.
Sure.
So,
And you see the buy-in from the producers that they want to know that next piece to unlock.
so what is next?
Yeah.
The good ones, that's what they ask, sure.
Yeah. So it's not, as you describe this, Dr. Schwab, I see it like a puzzle. When you build a puzzle and you I was built from the outside first, right? The corner pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so you've got your corner pieces, lysine, methionine.
Yeah.
And so if you could build out the rest of that puzzle with the other amino acids, so it's a complete package.
So exciting.
If you could stand back and look at that picture, what would that look like?
Well, I don't want to quit doing what I'm doing until I'm going to push Adisseo a little bit harder. And I have been. I did publicly here at the meeting yesterday.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I totally understand, I understand, processing situation, all that, getting a production line set up to do it. I mean, that, to me, that would be part of the corner pieces. I mean, we had the product. So we had a product like Smart Amino ML, where we know what the bioavailability values are. And I don't know if there's some issues, in protecting some of these other amino acids. Can they protect it as efficiently or as well with similar levels of bioavailability? And the bioavailability doesn't have to be 80%. It could be 70, it could be 60, it could be 50. We just need to know what it is. And then we go for it. Yeah. And so, in other words, I guess what I'm saying is the people that are using your products, let them be part of the research. Let them help find the solution because they want the answers.
Yeah.
They want the answers. So let them be part of trying to answer these questions. And they're willing to do it. So I think that's really where it is.
Yeah.
And once we have them, and then the question came up about non-essential amino acids. I think the data is accumulating, especially in transition cows.
Really?
Transition cows, that it is not just essential amino acids. It's non-essential. And they could be just as important. As a matter of fact, there is one piece of evidence already that would suggest that we know how important all the amino acids are to that early fresh cow. And we've always assumed that most of that response of these cows has to do with the essentials. So there's been one attempt just to look at this with the essentials and forget the non-essentials. Failure. Oops, not what we expected. I really don't want to provide more information than this, but it really causes us to pause. Totally unexpected. So there's a whole lot more to the story here with a transition cow and thinking about everything we heard here at the meeting about the importance of amino acid nutrition on overall health, oxidative stress, immune function, right?
Yes. Impact
on mTOR, the regulation of amino acid metabolism, where amino acids are in turn, they are involved in also regulating amino acid metabolism. So, and some of that, again, we've known for 50, 60 years, but not really looked at with the molecular techniques and everything we have today now to be able to look at some of that stuff in dairy cows. So there's still a lot to learn here. But in terms of amino acid limitation, to me, the end point is to identify what is the ideal balance of absorbed amino acids at the different stages of lactation. Because that was the focus in swine and poultry decades and decades ago. And things are just so much more complex in the ruminant, but that's where the focus has to be. And that ideal balance of absorbed amino acids might look a whole lot different in the transition cow than thereafter. It looks like it probably is Probably, yes.
So this is the next door to unlock is the
Yeah.
transition cow.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned before, Dr. Schwab, that you're not done. You're not done yet.
Well, I just like to be part of the continuing discovery and
Yeah.
implementation. Both get me excited. Both.
Yeah. Something else I wanted to ask you about too is, see, you devoted your whole life to this research and education, and your son is actually here with you, who is a practicing dairy nutritionist, right? So what's that like for you to have a child that pursued this field in the way that he did?
Yeah, I don't really have words for it other than I never felt like I forced him into being involved in dairy, because he didn't grow up on a dairy farm, but he started working at our UNH dairy as a freshman, became very involved in the dairy. As long as he was on campus, he was taking care of cows. And he really, I think, enjoyed it. I think he's got a much better eye than me in terms of diagnosing when cows aren't happy versus when they are happy or what's going on. So it's pretty neat. It's been pretty neat to share the same stage with him at some meetings where he speaks and I speak.
That is pretty cool. Do you ever run into issues that you don't agree on?
No. No.
Yeah, you're on the same page.
No, I mean, he is definitely sold on amino acid balancing. Let's put it that way. He's one of those people that say, "What's next, Dad? Get on with it. Get on with it."
And so that's a fun place to be.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool.
That is really
pretty
cool.
I mean, he's got to cover all the bases, right? Fatty acids, vitamins. Actually, he did his PhD. Part of his PhD work was done at UNH because he was interested in B vitamin work, and he needed to do work using cannulated cows. So he actually ran his cannulated cow trial at the University of New Hampshire. So he left Madison for 6 months.
Really?
Came to UNH. And it was really great for us because the students there got involved, and it was very intense project where we had to empty the rumens and weigh everything and
sounds like a dirty
analyze
job.
rumen contents for vitamins and whatever, So it was exciting. So I was honored to be part of his committee, so to speak.
Yeah. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. You ended up having a pretty strong influence through your research on your son as a dairy nutritionist. But bigger picture, what is the message that you would like? What's kind of your soapbox message for dairy nutritionists about taking the work that you've done and putting into practice at the farm level? What's the message that you would want to leave anyone in the dairy nutrition space with?
I think first and foremost, just recognize the fact that amino acids are the nutrients. I mean, protein is not a nutrient. It's a proximate nutrient, the way the whole Wendy system was set up, back in Germany in the late 1800s, where we recognized proximate nutrients as being water and crude protein. You analyze something for nitrogen and multiply it by a factor to get crude protein and fat and so on, fiber. And so of all of those proximate nutrients, ash was one, total mineral. We don't think about any of those other proximate nutrients other than water and crude protein. Total fat is pretty much gone out the window, total ash gone out the window, the old fiber system gone out the window. But yet we hang on to crude protein. And we tried to be as direct as we could be in NRC 2001 to say, at the very least, let's drop crude protein and talk about RDP and RUP, rumen degradable protein, rumen non-degraded protein. That's what crude protein is. So break it down though. So don't stop monitoring, stop thinking about crude protein. So I've given many presentations where I show the RDP content of the diet as predicted by NRC or CNCPS, RDP and RUP. And once in a while, somebody will ask, well, you didn't show crude protein. Well, no. You just add those two, and that's crude protein. But why do you want to know? Because RDP is there to feed the rumen bacteria, rumen microbes. RUP is what's going to make it to the lower gut. So they serve two totally different purposes. So why do you want to keep tying them together? Why do you want to express bypass protein as a percent of crude? Doesn't make sense. No. RDP is percent of diet dry matter, or however you want to express it, per unit of metabolizable energy, whatever. But RDP is for the rumen bacteria, RUP is for the cow. And to this day, most people still have it in the back of their mind. You heard it here in the meeting. We can drop crude protein down to 16% to 15%. Okay, that's progress.
Yeah.
But what are you going to drop? You're going to drop RDP or RUP. Makes a big difference. If you drop RDP, you could be shortchanging the bugs in the room. So we still got a lot of progress.
So that's one more impact you'd like to make in this dairy nutrition world is the word crude protein is no longer used at meetings or in publications.
Well, or just get it out of models.
Yeah.
I mean, just show, because the models are predicting RDP and RUP, just stop showing crude protein. It's pretty simple. Stop showing it.
So as you said, your work is not done yet. And you're still having fun.
Yeah, I do enjoy it.
Well, I sure enjoyed getting to sit down with you, Dr. Schwab. This has been fun and enlightening.
My pleasure.
Yeah, getting to hear a little bit about the early beginnings of your work, the lifespan of your career, and the what's next to come with amino acids. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Peggy Coffeen with the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, and thank you for listening to this very special series from the Adisseo VIP Dairy Seminar. These episodes have been made possible by Adisseo, a global leader in animal nutrition and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to capture the value of components and maintain the health of their high-performing herds.